I saw 50 movies this summer. Am I crazy? Of course I am. Today, we're gonna rank them. What's up, Flick fans? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. How does that apply here? I have no clue. But we're gonna put some movies on some tiers. Austin, why do the tiers look different? Well, I decided to make them summer themed because that's fun and I was bored. Let's take a look. The first one is Brighter Than a Summer's Day. This is the tip-top tier where every summer movie wants to be. The next tier is still a really good tier. That is Summer Breeze. There's nothing like a nice summer breeze. In the middle, sort of, is Summer Fling. Everyone loves a good summer fling. It's awesome while it lasts, but are they memorable? Sometimes yes, other times no. We have dog days. Dog days are the hottest parts of the summer, oftentimes not very pleasant, although you can get a good tan. How about sunburn? No one wants a sunburn. No one likes a sunburn. It's the worst. What's worse than the worst? Beach, please. Because it's like bitch, please. I thought it was funny at the time. Now that I'm looking at it, it's not, but we've made it this far. No going back. Also, 50 movies. We've already done monthly tier lists, so I'm going to try to move through this as quick as possible. A lot of this is me repeating myself, but it's fun. We're going to make it summer themed. If you enjoy this tier list and you want a fall movie preview tier list, let me know by dropping that like down below and leaving a comment, of course. What movie did I miss this summer? Let's start out with the Deliverance, a horror movie that I've talked about multiple times on this channel over the last week. Glenn Close given a crazy performance, one of the craziest you'll ever see in a horror movie. The performances themselves were actually pretty good, and the first two acts, like I've said, had a lot of potential with the themes that we're exploring, but Lee Daniels, it just turns into a conventional cliche and kind of weird horror movie in the third act, and it honestly makes the first two acts not as good as they were while I was watching them. So the Deliverance goes on the sunburn tier. Could have been on dog days, but oh well. How about The Oddity? This is a horror movie that I'm not going to forget. You want to know why? Because of the weird-looking dude that you see right there in that picture. Oh my goodness. This is actually a horror movie that scared me. And while there are some moments that are a little slower, it's a lot of characters sitting down, having conversations, dialogue-driven for sure. There was intrigue at the beginning. Those conversations are interesting. You're trying to figure things out as you go. And that dude is terrifying. A couple of genuine scares. It didn't make me jump, but they made me freak out a little bit internally. And so I'm putting The Oddity on the Summer Breeze tier. This one is one that I may revisit and is definitely not forgettable. How about The Strangers Chapter 1? I'll be honest with you, I don't remember a lot about this film. Now, I do remember a little bit about the original The Strangers movie, and that's a franchise that has a lot of fans, but they're trying to do this again, but in a different way, yet it's not that different of a way, and what is different in this movie is just frankly not as good. I could have cared less about this couple, and you're supposed to care. A couple of nice moments towards the end, but it's a very generic and forgettable, but most importantly, an unnecessary horror movie. And sometimes that's the worst kind of thing. So I'm going to put The Strangers Chapter 1 on Beach, please, because why? Tarot, or as I like to call it, Tarot, because it kind of rhymes with carrot. That's probably the most interesting thing about this movie. And I never had tarot cards. I never played with them. Frankly, they freak me out, so why would I do that? And I thought the idea of a movie where a bunch of friends are going out and being reckless and playing with these tarot cards, freaky things start happening. It's got Jacob Batalon in it. I thought that was a really good idea, to be honest with you. It is one of the most generic horror movies I've watched, not only this year, but this decade. And frankly, nothing about it is atrocious, maybe other than some of the ways that the relationships are handled, which is just so generic. And it's like, why is this not on Netflix? But everything else about it is boring and forgettable and bland, and not even a couple of fun actors in here could save it. All in all, I, once again, could have cared less about anybody in this movie. So again, a horror movie on the beach, please tier. The more I say it, the more I hate it, but we're stuck. Mia Goth. That's the name of this movie, right? Oh, it's Maxine, because she's not Mia Goth, she's playing Maxine. Mia Goth has just fallen into these roles in all three of these movies so perfectly. It's like I buy 1000% that she is each of these characters individually, even though this one ties directly into X. But you know what I mean, right? It's the same director, obviously, but every genre is different with each entry. Pearl is so different than X, which is so different than Maxine. I love that. I appreciate that. This is probably the most stylistic, the most cinematic, if you will, movie of the trilogy, and it's just a vibe over the first two acts. Like just walking around this area, exploring all these Hollywood places, walking in and out of set, man. It's a vibe with this murder mystery thing going on. People are hunting down Maxine. The third act's insane. It's absolutely crazy. But I can't put this on Summer Fling because I'm not going to forget this experience. I also think there's a ton of quality there in the first two acts. So just the way that this tier list is constructed, I'm going to put this one on Summer Breeze, man. This is a vibe and a half. The third act is crazy. Didn't love it, but you know what? It's going on there. I just want you all to know, I absolutely love the idea of In a Violent Nature. I think it's one of the most creative and unique horror ideas I've seen in a long time. Seeing these things through the killer's perspective. I know we've got another movie coming out like that in a couple of months, but it's an awesome idea. Conceptually great. And the moments in this movie that are great are really great. The problem is the rest of it, the in-between, where the killer's just kind of sitting and waiting on the people that he's going to go kill. It's about as boring as it sounds. It's a lot of sitting and waiting and characters we don't care about. When the kills happen, they are awesome. One in particular that is one of the most memorable horror kills I've seen in a long time. That being said, the rest of the film and then the third act, which gets it was a little too much for me, I just didn't really enjoy the overall experience. It's more about the moments. And so go watch those clips on YouTube. Otherwise, this is going in the dog days of summer. How about Cuckoo with Hunter Schafer? This movie has neon written all over it. It's filmed exquisitely. It has great atmosphere, great style, great performances from Hunter Schafer and a couple of others in there who are outstanding. I also think Dan Stevens gives one of the most strange and demented performances I've seen all year in a subtle way. But there are some things about this film that aren't so subtle. One, maybe two scares that were great again with the really good scares this summer. And then the screeching, man. The screeching freaked me out. I still don't know everything that happened at the end. I don't know if it all comes together or makes sense. But you know what? I had a great time. A time that resembles a nice summer breeze. It's getting cheesier. Longlegs. I enjoyed Longlegs for very different reasons than a lot of other people. According to that first batch of critics that watched it, they said Longlegs is the scariest movie of the year, maybe of the decade, maybe of all time. I watched this film and I said, no, it's not. But what it is a really interesting crime thriller with a satanic spin. All of those things are great. I love movies like Seven and really any David Fincher film in that vein. And this resembles that. It has a similar style and atmosphere and nature. And, by the time you get to the end, I think there were some ways they could have handled elements that would have come together great and made this brighter than a summer's day. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, I'm still going to have to put it on Summer Breeze. But hey, that is still great. It's just not really scary. Kinds of Kindness. Yorgos Lanthimos, Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, 3 different short films, if you will, combined into one movie with very similar themes and things that you could tie into each one, but the stories are very different. Obviously, last year was a huge success between Yorgos and Emma Stone. This film is quite different. I enjoyed one of them. I was mixed on the other. And then the third is it wasn't my cup of tea. It didn't really come together. I wasn't as interested as they wanted me to be. I believe the first film within this film is great. Didn't need to be any longer. So I don't know if you could have just made that its own short film and I would have been thrilled with the conclusion. Kind of like what we did last year with Wes Anderson and Benedict Cumberbatch. He did a couple of those. But the overall experience wasn't pleasant because the other two go on way too long and one of them just falls completely flat. And I didn't expect that from Yorgos Lanthimos and Emma Stone right after what happened last year. And so, unfortunately, as a whole, I have to go Kinds of Kindness. on the dog days tier. Some good elements for sure, but I didn't love the final product. Man, I wanted this. I wanted the Watchers to be really good because I was excited as M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. There's some really good ideas here. Dakota Fanning is great. And it starts out in a semi-interesting way. But once we are sitting here in this glass container and these people are being watched, they start to slowly introduce these ideas where, you start out intrigued and you end up like, okay, what are we doing? It gets so dumb and so ridiculous to a point where I'm like, it's got shades of a Shyamalan movie, but it doesn't quite have that style and sense of technique that his better films have. Maybe it does his worst films. And I'm not going to say there wasn't conceptually something here that could have worked extremely well, but it falls flat. And honestly, I was just expecting more, so not intending this for our director here, but Beach, please. Let's talk about a really interesting directorial debut. Zoe Kravitz with Blink Twice, from an atmosphere standpoint, from a filmmaking standpoint, makes you feel unnerved, just a little off, unstable while we're on this island that these characters show up to. Naomi Ackie, who's fantastic. And waiting for them is Channing Tatum and a bunch of friends, the craziest cast you'll ever see. Simon Rex, Christian Slater, like it's insane. And while the beginning, some people will see it as boring, I'm kind of enjoying this. And then you start to get those reveals, what's actually happening on the island, what's going on. It's going to work for some, it's not going to work for others. I felt like it could have been a little more subtle about some of the things, and then there's one twist in there where I'm like, I think we could have done without that. Makes it overly convoluted, but I like the way it wraps up. I enjoyed the journey up to that, and the filmmaking style, the atmosphere, they were all really great. So some mixed things overall, but I have to put Blink Twice on the summer fling tier because there's some really good things about it. I wanted to love this more than anything because the idea is amazing. Imagine being stuck at a Taylor Swift concert and there's a murderer there, but you don't know the murderer's there, yet the FBI, they're kind of surrounding the place and not letting anybody leave. That would be terrifying. And frankly, if you think about it, you're just ruining people's experience. Like if I'm there with my daughter and this is happening, I'm like, okay, the experience is ruined because now I'm fearing for her life, or at least reflecting after I get security checked, fearing for her life. Why was I there in the first place? All of these questions. I love it. Trap started out as a really good movie. I love the vibe. I love the tone. Josh Hartnett is embracing this insane performance where the dialogue is so out there. It's okay if you hate it. It's okay if you love it. Admittedly, y'all have to admit, it's out there. But the way it wraps up, when they leave the venue, that's what I didn't like. It gets too stupid, too ridiculous, so many conveniences. So, yeah, it fell flat by the end. But God, the beginning was just so good. So good. And so I'm mixed. I'm trying to figure out where I want to put it. Is it more of a summer fling? Is it more in the dog days tier? And it's like, I enjoyed this. I was entertained way more than the two movies on the dog days tier. And so I'll be nice to Trap and put this on the summer fling tier, even though it does crumble by the end. The Crow. I wanted this to be amazing. I'm a huge Skarsgård fan. I'm a huge fan of the original movie. Didn't even know I was. I went back recently and watched it for the first time, and I'm like, no, that is really good. People were hyping it up for years, and I was like, all right, let's see. No, it was really good, really emotional. And they make you emotionally connected towards those two characters in about 15 minutes in that movie. Well, this film spends 45 minutes on the main romance, does nothing for me. I am not invested. I do not care. I was bored. That's love? Okay. They like each other, sure. And then he turns into the Crow. And it's just a bunch of generic action that I've seen before. So nothing about it stands out other than one opera scene that was really entertaining. But then I'm thinking, why wasn't the rest of the movie like that? So yeah, one of the most unmemorable experiences of the year. Because of that, I'm putting The Crow on the beach, please, tier. I hate it more and more. Strange, Darling, Willa Fitzgerald, Kyle Gallner, and JT Molnar, who he's on my watch list. It's like, whatever this guy does, I'm going to be checking it out. Because what starts out as a conventional serial killer movie where a guy's chasing this girl and everything is as it seems, and you're like, all right, I've seen this before. It's atmospheric. I love the vibe of the movie, but I've seen this story before. Let's see how it goes. And it just unravels. And I say that in a good way. We'll say ravels, turns into something that was unlike anything that I had seen in the genre before from a storytelling perspective. The way they tell this story makes it what it is. And I don't know if it's going to hit as hard on rewatch because then I'll know what's coming. But just turn after turn, I'm like, oh my God. They're telling it in this very distinct way. And it's so stylistic on top of that. The character decisions, just the uniqueness of this movie made it a great time at the theater, a surprising time. And again, the filmmaking is banger. Is a banger? Oh, that was weird. All right, let's put Strange Darling on the brighter than a summer's day tier. Under Paris, it's a shark movie. There are sharks under Paris, and it's on Netflix. I actually should have included this in my little Netflix portion, but it's kind of a horror movie, so we're here. It's a horror movie. Now, my question is, they're doing this big event. There's like a marathon type of thing going on here. I can't really remember. It was a while ago when I saw this. But they just say, because they don't want to lose money, they're like, yeah, we'll do it. We know there are sharks under there. We know people are probably going to die. Let's just do it anyway. And there's a really smart scientist in this film. No one wants to listen to him. I'm just like, what are we doing? The decision-making's so dumb. The shark scenes are cool. Admittedly, it's what keeps it from being atrocious. And a lot of the things that are happening underwater, they're bloody, and you can see them clear as day. So I actually give the movie props for that. Kudos. In that way, it was kind of fun. Fun enough to be in the dog days. Not for me, because it was so dumb. And so Under Paris is going on Sunburn. Ouchies. Jim Cummings. That's all I have to say. Jim Cummings is in this movie. He's the star. I love Jim. I have spoken to Jim. He's fantastic. This movie was great. Last stop in Yuma County. We're going from the horror genre to kind of more of a thriller genre. It's definitely a thriller, thrills and chills, and just a bunch of people at this little diner, this little restaurant. They're all trying to get gas. None of them can leave, but they're stuck there with two people who just robbed a bank. Yet all of them have their secrets and have their things. This is a movie that's driven through dialogue, really good performances across the board, which I enjoyed, and a couple of moments that caught me off guard, man. It's fun, it's riveting, it moves a little slow, and admittedly, the ending expects you to put stock into certain things that I don't think were built up entirely properly, but I have no choice but to put The Last Stop in Yuma County on the Summer Breeze tier. This is a modern Western thriller at its finest. We go from a modern Western to definitely more of a classic Western. And of course it's going to be because it's Kevin Costner. This is his baby. Horizon American Saga Part 1 was everything he wanted it to be. It just did not resonate with audiences because it did not do well at the box office. Although most of the audiences that I saw come out of the theater really enjoyed it. I was in the camp of, I think there are really good things here. It's definitely a part 1. It's a little too slow for me. They're doing a lot of things, but it has that classic Western, like big event type of thing that actually has me intrigued for a part 2, even with my issues for part 1. And so I'm there whenever they decide to release part 2. They were going to, and then they weren't, and they pulled it. Now they're premiering it at a festival, yada, yada, yada. I'll definitely be there. This is the type of movie that I would love to watch with my dad. Didn't fully work for me, but again, it sets the stage for something epic in part 2. And so I'm going to say Horizon, for me, was a summer fling, but one I'm excited to see more from. All right, now we're getting into more of those based on a true story types of movies. The Bike Riders, not fully that, but kind of that. I loved this cast. Austin Butler and Tom Hardy and Jeff Nichols. Jeff Nichols is a really good director. This is one of my lesser favorite, if that makes sense, Jeff Nichols movies. And honestly, the further I get away from the Bike Riders, the less I'm super enthused about it. Because in the beginning, I'm like, there's some really good performances here. The ideas are there. Some epic moments, for sure. That moment when they decide that they're going from just a fun little club to something a little more serious was great. When, well, the picture that you see right there, it's burning down. But I wanted to know more about Butler's character, and then that relationship between he and Jodie Comer's character, and the fact that the movie's told from Jodie Comer's perspective, I didn't love the execution of, even though there was a lot of potential. And so I'm going to put the Bike Riders on the summer fling tier. Not as good as I want it to be. I still think there's a lot of quality here, but definitely sort of disappointed. Back to Black, the story of Amy Winehouse, but it's really looking at more of a portion of Amy Winehouse's life, her early career, and, you know, you've got these biopics, it's like The Rise and The Fall, and she has a fascinating story, she has a wonderful story, an amazing life, an amazing legacy. I don't know if this was portrayed in the way that they wanted it to be portrayed. Not that it was portrayed in a bad way, it's just a really bland movie. Like, nothing stands out, the dialogue is a little all over the place, the performance is fine. I expected her to be a lot better as Amy. I expected it to be more impactful. I expected the singing to be better than it was, the way it was handled in this movie, and I wanted to love this film. Unfortunately, and I don't think it's as bad as some people made it out to be, but it didn't work, and I didn't really enjoy my time with it. I walked away so disappointed, and so hopefully we get another crack at an Amy Winehouse story. Unfortunately, I have to put Back to Black on the Sunburn tier. All right, Sing Sing. Now, we won't talk about this too long because we just talked about it. Coleman Domingo's performance, how I think he right now is a favorite for the Oscar. Again, I haven't seen a lot of the other movies, so that could change for sure. But this is a beautiful, mesmerizing, not necessarily based on a true story, but based on a series of things that make it a true story. In a way, like, I believe a lot of these characters are representing what has actually happened with this program that comes into these prisons, and these people who are incarcerated get an opportunity to express their emotions by getting up on stage and perform in these plays. And that's beautiful. And again, people who are there trying to get out, they know they're there for forever, so they're grappling with all of these elements. And then Coleman Domingo plays a guy who, at the beginning of the movie, he's just trying to bring everybody together and say, hey, this is our chance to get up on stage and perform. And that's beautiful. And I loved it. And you can watch me rave about this film in my review. But if you get a chance to see Sing Sing, A24's Sing Sing, go see it, because I think you'll get emotional. I think it will move you. It's not the definition of a summer movie, necessarily, but for me, it was definitely brighter than a summer's day. You got to check it out. Fly Me to the Moon. Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum. Are we in the Channing sans? Is it Tatum sans or Channing sans? I don't know. He's good in this movie. Scarlett Johansson's great. She's amazing in this film. I was like, this is better, because they try to frame it as like a romantic comedy or just a romance type of thing, and it's not necessarily that all the way through. It is a funny twist on the moon landing, to where it's like they're filming this fake moon landing. Is it going to be the fake one? Is it going to be the real one? And yeah, you figure it out. Go watch my review. I talk about the story. But what stands out, Johansson's performance, just kind of like that snappy, witty dialogue, and it's directed by Greg Berlanti, who isn't doing, I think, up to the level that I know he can do with that witty dialogue and the relationships and the dynamic. The chemistry between the two, it's pretty good. Not the best I've ever seen, but it's good enough to make Fly Me to the Moon a charming, fun, kind of nice, a little bit surprising movie that I thought looked ridiculous, but ultimately ended up being a nice little summer fling, at least for me. All right, Chris Pine plays a pool man who goes around trying to make his town a better place. It's a very LA movie that goes to these places and locations that people that live there, they're going to be like, oh, cool, sweet, nice, awesome. That's kind of how I feel when I see a movie set in Kentucky. I'm like, I know that place, or something along those lines. So maybe you got that out of Pool Man. I don't know what this was trying to be. It was trying to be a comedic, like a Coen brother of old type of film. It kind of reminded me of what the vibe that Oh Brother Where Art Thou has, but it didn't really accomplish that. To be honest with you, I just thought it was a bland. And the cast is amazing. Annette Bening, Danny DeVito, DeWanda Wise, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Clancy Brown, obviously Chris Pine, who directed this film as well. That's what I was excited about. I'm like, I want to see his directorial debut. It's not great. Not great, Bob. Could have been a lot better. Should have been better. I don't think it's the worst thing I've seen this summer, but definitely felt like Sunburn to me. How about My Spy? 2, The Eternal City. Dave Bautista and that little girl, they're back to kick some ace. Yeah, It's not good. It has a little case of sequelitis, but this time he's watching over all these kids, so he's got to be the cool, kick-ass spy, but he's also got to be the caretaker and the guy who gets all the kids ready for disaster while also, I guess, being their mentor or whatever. I don't know. Why did I watch this? You remember that first movie, the trailer came out, and it was like, showed 50 times before the movies in the theaters, and I'm like, why have I seen this trailer 100 times? Why? There's no point. Stop showing me this trailer. I don't want to see it anymore. And then the movie never came out until it did. What are we talking about? This felt like Sunburn, so yeah. John Krasinski's If. I wanted to love this as a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends connoisseur. I wanted to absolutely love this. The idea of these imaginary friends, where they go after they're gone, where the owners are, sort of kind of thing. I should have put this in imaginary back-to-back. But you know what? We're doing it. Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds in this film. I thought the little girl did a great job. I thought there were some heartwarming moments, some emotional moments. It's going to work for families. It's going to work for kids. But the uniqueness was lacking. Like, I don't remember any of the imaginary characters, even though the voice cast is insane. Like Steve Carell, Emily Blunt, Bill Hader. So yeah, we're doing If on the Dog Days tier. Sweet, but forgettable. Harold and the Purple Crayon. Why is Harold a man? And I'm not hating on Zachary Levi. All right, I'm not hating on him for no reason. I'm hating on him because this movie stinks. Why is he a man? Why is Harold a man? And why are we just walking around New York drawing things? Who cares? Walk around New York in a different movie. This is not the movie where you should just walk around New York. You can do that anywhere at any time. Why are you doing that in this movie? Beach! Please! Stupid. How about the Garfield movie? I was not hating on Chris Pratt for starring in this. Take that money, pal. It's got a pretty good cast. Samuel L. Jackson and other people in the film. Look, it's supposed to be a Garfield movie. I don't know what else it would have been, but what it was turned into an action-adventure escape film where Chris Pratt's Garfield gets to hang out with his dad, which was nice. I thought the emotions in the beginning were actually really sweet. But from there, they just make it a generic, let's make an animated adventure comedy for kids and throw in Garfield. Not include the things that make Garfield unique 2/3 of the way into the movie and do nothing after that, because they kind of do it in the beginning, but it loses its way. Nothing about it stands out. Chris Pratt actually doesn't do a bad job, but like, this was not good. It's not a good animated movie. The Garfield movie goes on the Sunburn tier because, ouch, Sunburn. There are so many things that I could say. And I ranted about this in my August tier list. You can go check out my rant there. But SpongeBob, folks, is not what SpongeBob used to be. And it's sad. It makes me angry. Pisses me off a little bit. I want to go kick something over. I may have already done that before we started. This movie stinks. It tries to throw in all the SpongeBob isms, the my leg guy, the funny words that we've heard in the past, the phrases. And it's like, you're just doing it to do it, man. There's no love. There's no passion. There's no sense of uniqueness to this movie. It's a stupid animated movie where Sandy's the lead. I like Sandy. But this story was dumb. They dumb all the characters down. I'm angry. I shouldn't be this angry about an animated movie. But you know what? SpongeBob used to be great. But now, beach, please. Now we have The Imaginary, an anime that I genuinely believe did a lot of good. It was what I thought If should have been. Am I going to sit back and say this is the most memorable movie of the summer? Not necessarily. I think the characters are really sweet. And there's actually an emotional core to this film that you don't often see in anime movies that look as if they're targeting younger kids a bit more. It definitely looks that way. It kind of feels that way, but there are some emotions here that are beautiful. The animation is beautiful. It's stunning. The story kind of loses its way, but again, there's some really good moments. It takes that imaginary friends concept, elevates it from what we saw in If, makes it way more unique and interesting. So this one's on Netflix. I encourage you guys to go check it out if you've never heard of it. I'm going to put The Imaginary on the Summer Fling tier because ever so slightly forgettable. The biggest movie of the summer. I can't believe I'm saying that. That is insane. Now, Deadpool and Wolverine's coming close, but Inside Out 2, man, I think it's the highest grossing animated film of all time. Like, ever. Which is, again, insane. I never thought I would say that. I never thought it would get there. I don't know what to think, man. It's so cool. And I will say, it feels like Pixar back to form, like back to formula. It is a beautiful movie. I love the way we handle Riley's progression. We spend a little more time in the real world, which was kind of nice, but we also get those moments in our imaginary world. Emotions cavern, that's what I'm going to call it. But this time we have anxiety. Maya Hawke does a great job. Our voice cast from the original, even the new cast members that play old characters do a good job. And all in all, it's a sweet story. It's a heartfelt story. It's not quite as unique, and it doesn't quite have those moments from the first Inside Out. That's kind of what I was missing, those big emotional moments. But all throughout, it carries its heart on its sleeve. And so I really appreciate that. Inside Out, for me, is absolutely a summer breeze. Despicable Me 4. You know, it's, well, not the best. I feel as if this franchise has got, I wouldn't say progressively worse, because I thought the second Minions was way better than the first Minions, but I feel like it's gotten, I mean, at least this quadrilogy of movies has gotten worse, right? Despicable Me 4 just doesn't have the juice or the magic or really the story of the first couple. The first Despicable Me, I think, is an awesome family movie. There's heart to it. There's a sense of magic and wonder to it, and that's kind of present here. You got Will Ferrell. You got some cool people involved. They got a new family member, which is really sweet, admittedly, but I just didn't really care about what was going on. I think Gru is less interesting. This journey doesn't quite have that spark. It stinks that I feel this way about this franchise, but I have to put it on the sunburn tier. All right, Jackpot. We're getting into the streaming movies. Amazon Prime, I believe. Is this Amazon? I think so. It's Paul Feig. It's John Cena. It's Awkwafina. It's Simu Liu. I love the cast. Imagine if The Purge involved the lottery, but it was a comedy. That's exactly what this is. And on its surface, I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. That's really cool. It's kind of fun. To be honest with you, I had a better time with this than I thought I was going to. It's silly. Not very funny at times. A lot of the jokes fall flat, although some of them were like, yeah, okay. And, you know, we see Awkwafina in these types of roles all the time. I love when she does something different. This is not something different. This is what we expect. Just from the concept, you could see how this movie is going to go. But I liked when she was on screen with John Cena. There were some fun things about it. And so it was better than I thought it was going to be, but it still didn't nail a lot of the things that it tried to do. I'm going to throw Jackpot on the Dog Days tier. Better than I thought. Nicholas Galitzine, Anne Hathaway, The Idea of You, I think. Is this based on a book? It's based on something. Or it's just based on the countless movies that we've seen like this. This time around, it's Anne Hathaway's character. She's a little older. She's trying to figure out what she's going to do. And then she meets this pop star, this singer, very popular man. Very popular man. And, yeah, it's what you expect. Right? It's a romance, but we're dealing with some things here, like what Anne Hathaway's mindset is throughout this movie, admittedly was a lot more interesting than I thought. How the people around her handle this relationship. We're going to talk about another movie here in a little bit that tried to do this, but didn't do it nearly as successfully as The Idea of You. I'm not going to say this movie is great, but it did some things that worked, which I appreciate. And again, other movies like this haven't done. And so I'm putting The Idea of You on the summer fling tier. And it's appropriate because it's a summer fling. All right, you know what? I'm moving it. I want to go ahead and talk about it because this is trying to do the exact same thing. Except Zac Efron's character, he's not a singer, he's an actor, he's really famous, he's not a very good actor, or at least he's not doing the right projects because his manager, who's played by Joey King, well, she's trying to get him to do those things, but he's very stubborn, he won't do them, yada, yada, yada. So a little bit of a different story there, but Nicole Kidman's character falls for him, this younger guy, very similar type of thing, but we don't explore those themes that I thought were really interesting about the Anne Hathaway one nearly as well. And I didn't really buy the romance between these two. It's like they have a physical relationship, and that turns into an emotional relationship, except they have nothing in common. She kind of babysits him. He's looking for a mother figure instead of, at least that's what it feels like to me, and he finds that in her, but they're getting physical with each other. I don't know. I just didn't really, this romance didn't work like the director intended, and honestly, I love Efron. I love Kidman. Joey King's character was my favorite. She was the most interesting part, which is funny because it's a Netflix movie. And so, yeah, I'm going to put A Family Affair on, let's go on the Sunburn tier, unfortunately. How about Incoming, the 2024 version of Superbad Light? At least that's what it was trying to be. It didn't necessarily accomplish that. But admittedly, while it was dumb and it was silly and the romance was not great, there were some funny moments. And you know what? I'll rephrase that. The romance could have been better, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. And I could see how kids this age would watch this, not be dumber by the time it's over, like a lot of these Netflix movies, but be of average intelligence, if that makes sense. It's funny enough. It's fine. It's not as bad as the Superbad ripoff that I thought it was going to be, but it didn't fully accomplish all of its goals. The comedy is not the best, but it has charm. So, Incoming, going on the Dog Days tier. So, Unfrosted tried to do with Pop-Tarts what Weird did with Weird Al a year or two ago, whenever that came out. I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was funny. That's my type of humor. The over-the-top and ridiculousness of this type of satire or spoof, whatever you want to call it. We don't get a lot of those nowadays. And this cast, Melissa McCarthy, Jim Gaffigan, Hugh Grant, Amy Schumer, Jerry Seinfeld, Jerry, airline food. It has all the makings to be a great movie. And I thought it would be a great movie. It's bad. It's real bad. This is bad. This is very, very bad. It is not funny. The stupidity isn't funny stupid. It's just stupid. And the irony of Jerry Seinfeld coming out before this happened, and politically, I could care less about any of that stuff. I don't want to get caught up in that nonsense. But it's just funny that he came out and said that and then made this movie that wasn't funny. And some people told me in the comments, they're like, Austin, you don't understand the time period. It's like, yeah, but who cares? I mean, Apollo 10.5 that came out a few years ago was revolving around a time period that I wasn't a part of, yet I loved that movie. It felt nostalgic to me, even though I had never been there. This was a mess. And Amy Schumer's in it. So we're going to put Unfrosted on the beach, please, tier. How about Atlas? Look, Jennifer Lopez fans, I want to apologize for the way that I was treated on Twitter. Not apologizing. Reverse Uno card. Listen, this movie tried its best to be a little sentimental, a little emotional at the beginning with the relationship between Jennifer Lopez's character, whomst I will never remember her name in this movie. But there were some emotional moments, but it just becomes so stale when she's in the robot. And then when they bring about this villainous character and they try to make it climactic at the end, it's like a mishmash of some of the worst aspects of science fiction movies I've ever seen. It tries to be Terminator. It tries to have the relationship like an Iron Giant. But ultimately it fails, man, because there was just nothing really compelling about this script, this story. Jennifer Lopez, look, I like her in certain settings. I didn't like her in this one. I don't think she was all that good. And again, I got attacked for that. But you know what? I don't care. So let's go ahead and put Atlas on the beach, please. I've had enough of that. Hey, everybody, look at me. It's Mark Wahlberg. Me and Halle Berry. We're having a good time. I'm in the union. He didn't say that in the movie. It's a bad impression. I like Mark Wahlberg. I like Halle Berry. I like this type of movie. It's trying to be a spy film with a little bit of humor, a little bit of... Every time you watch a Netflix movie with this concept, it's the same thing. Whether it's Kevin Hart or Mark Wahlberg or whomever it is, I just didn't really care about this story, this script, the chemistry between the two. It's fine. But you are liking your experience, I think, more so because of the actors themselves rather than the characters, because the characters aren't very compelling. Mark Wahlberg's a nobody in this movie, which is crazy to me because he's a jacked, good-looking guy. But she's like, I'm going to get this nobody. I'm going to use my power to get this man into the FBI, CIA, whatever it is, even though he has no formal training. There's no reason why I'm getting him other than the fact that I went to school with him. And so from that point, I'm like, it's stupid. It's a stupid movie. Maybe some moments towards the end, a couple of action scenes that weren't the worst. It's one that you can put on in the background, which is like perfect for a Netflix movie, and do some dishes, do some chores while it plays. I don't think that's the worst thing, but it does kind of feel like Sunburn when you try to remember it. So Sunburn, here it is. Bad little Eddie Murphy, man. You can't go wrong with Beverly Hills Cop. Now, you can go wrong. I think the first two are extremely entertaining. I was nervous about what this movie would be because, again, legacy sequels, lately they've been better, but a lot of the times, especially in the mid-2000s, they've not been very good. And so I didn't know which direction this would go in. I think they waste characters like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's, but then you've got that dynamic between he and his daughter that's really good. And Eddie Murphy is really good. And he's having a great time. You're having a good time because he's having a great time, regardless of how forgettable the actual mission is, the plot is, this and that. I think there are good things in here. And you watch a movie like this to just kind of go back to what they used to be and have a fun experience with all of our returning characters and some of the new characters. And again, they put that relationship in there that does manage to trump the forgettable story. And yeah, it is a forgettable story, but I was really entertained by watching this, and I just like seeing Eddie Murphy in his element. I felt like he was in his element here. And so because of those things, I'm actually going to put this on the summer fling tier. I had a good experience with this. I bet you haven't heard this one before. Hitman was a hit, man. Get it? I don't actually know if this was a hit on Netflix. I know it was doing extremely well, and Glenn Powell, he's a superstar. We've been saying this the entire year. The guy is unstoppable right now between this and another movie we're going to talk about, but I found so much charm in here, and you can tell it's a Richard Linklater movie because there's something about the dialogue that's just so snappy and witty, but also a little slower at times to where you really get to know these characters. And this movie takes a couple of turns that not everybody's going to be up for towards the end because it gets a little crazy, but you know what? I had a great time with it. This is like School of Rock Linklater, where it's way more audience-friendly, but it still has that dialogue that just kind of whets your appetite for something a little more than we typically get out of this genre. Arjona and Powell had the best chemistry, and I just love their relationship, but it also has some moments that kind of go outside your standard, tries to be a little more type of movie to where it becomes really funny while you're watching. Not overly comedic, but really funny, which I appreciate. Hitman was just a great time. I enjoyed the premise, and I even enjoyed the semi-divisive ending. And so I'm going to put Hitman on the Summer Breeze tier, man. It's like the best. Well, I guess it's not the best because I didn't put it on the top tier. Let's talk about Caly 2898 AD. This was an experience that I would just recommend that everyone has at some point in their lives. Now, will you be able to replicate that theatrical experience? I don't know, man. There's an intermission. That's just really cool with a movie like this. Now, that means it's really long. It's a long film from India, but there's something about these films from India, and I know there's a new one. I'm going to go watch it in theaters soon. There's something about these films that just capture you, engross you, make you feel like you're watching something that you've never seen before. Some people will say this film is tonally all over the place, and it kind of is. But I was able to forgive that because how seamlessly it flows, how interesting the characters are, and how good of a time Ryan and I had in this theater, man. We were kicking back, laughing, over the top, insane. The action is crazy, but the characters, you care, and by the time you get to that end fight, you're on the edge of your seat. I was on the edge of my seat. Some CGI that was definitely questionable. Okay, I'm not saying it's great, but they're not on this big Hollywood budget. They're doing their own thing in India. I appreciate that. I respect that. And that's why I'm putting Caly on the Summer Breeze tier. What a time. How about John Wick on a Train, otherwise known as Kill? Well, you know what? This is not that. Because I thought it was going to be that. Walking into this theater, I'm like, it's going to be John Wick on a train. It's going to be a blast. And it is a blast. And it is great. And it is one of the best experiences I've had in the theater all year. It's not like Bullet Train as much as I thought it would be. It is its own thing. Now, when you get into the action, yeah, you could make those comparisons for sure. But the story, and when it turns into a revenge story, you start out as one thing, just two guys on a train, but there's this heist happening. There's something going on that kind of sparks this pushback, if you will. But our main character, when it turns into a revenge story, watch out. And it's not just a simple revenge story. It is full on, I am going to mow these people down until I get my revenge, and it was remarkable. Now, the action here, if you don't like these brutal R-rated movies, you're not going to love this film. But if you're in for that, and if you want to see something like this, Kill is one of the best times you'll have all year. I loved it. Again, Ryan went with me to this screening in Louisville. We were having the best time, and my God, dude, I was genuinely floored by how cool of an experience I had. A little tonally up and down in the beginning, but again, I'm like, let's freaking go, dude. This is some of the best action of 2024. Really, some of the best of the decade. I could rave about this all day. Brighter than a summer's day, 100%. Borderlands stinks. Borderlands is bad. It's a bad movie. Now, I didn't think it was going to be great. But part of me was like, maybe it's like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's a very similar team that we're building here, a ragtag group of anti-heroes, if you will, and they're going on a mission. They're trying to do some good. Also sounds like Guardians of the Galaxy. Somebody got on to me for making that comparison. I said, are you dumb? It's the only comparisons you can make. What are you doing here? Now, sure, I don't know a lot about the video game, but whether this followed the video game or not, and I don't know if it did, it doesn't mean it's good. It's still really bad. The dialogue is bad. The dynamic is bad. Now, I will say I respect, like, Kevin Hart for having a really good time. But the team building aspect, it's just you don't care about any of the characters individually. So when they make a team, you're like, okay, I still don't care about any of them. Jack Black's way too over the top for me. And the ending is stupid. It's so stupid. Again, game players might like it. I don't think they do, to be honest with you. And I'm going to put Borderlands on the beach. Please, tier. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boy, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Just go watch my review. Let's put Bad Boys, Ride or Die on the Summer Fling tier. Oh, yeah. Don't say I'm not a good salesman, because I definitely sold you on going and watching my review. It's so stupid. I'm so stupid. All right, what's next? Twisters. Give me a twister. Did I say Glenn Powell's a star? Because if I haven't said it, I'm going to say it again. Glenn Powell is a freaking star, dude. He rocks and rolls this film. If it was made 20 years ago, it definitely would have been Matthew McConaughey, but Glenn Powell fits the role perfectly. And I had a good time with this. I don't consider Twister to be like one of those all-time greats. A lot of people do. A lot of people think it's one of the greatest disaster movies of all time. And maybe it's up there, but it didn't resonate with me as a kid as much as it did a lot of other people. I like it. I think it's good, but I don't hold it to a high standard. So when I saw the sequel and had a better time with it, maybe it's because I saw it in the theater, I didn't see the first one in the theater, yada, yada, yada. I just think this is a really fun legacy sequel. More importantly, I think it's what a summer movie should be, what it's all about. Doesn't take itself too seriously, knows what it needs to be, captures the formula of the first, but goes into a little bit different of a direction. Now, some people were getting on to, the lack of a kiss at the end. I'm like, I don't care. It's Twisters. Give me tornadoes. And that's what it did in a fun way. And so I'm actually going to go Twisters on the Summer Breeze tier. I know, it's crazy. I wanted to love Fall Guy more than anything. I was so excited about the idea of Fall Guy because it's the director of John Wick, it's got Ryan Gosling, it's got Emily Blunt, it's got a really good cast, and you're showing some love to the stunt men and women who put their lives on the line for us every time we get a movie like that. That's incredible, and that actually translated really well in the film, as well as Gosling's performance. Now, the relationship between he and Emily Blunt, I just didn't really care about it. I was like, it's fine. It has some things in there that I kind of like, some things in there that I don't love, and ultimately, I just found this plot to be forgettable. I don't care about the mission. I don't really care about the relationship. The action's good. There are individual scenes that I liked, and the stunts work extremely well. So they elevate it to a level that's entertaining, but ultimately, I think I'm not on my own, but I definitely am not falling in line with the crowd on this one. Unfortunately, guys, I have to put the Fall Guy on the Dog Days tier. I didn't want to do it, but I feel like I have to. Transparency is good. How about Quiet Place? Day 1, the first day of the aliens attacking. We saw that a little bit in Quiet Place Part 2, but now we're putting it in a New York setting. Why did I say it like that? New York? It's a New York setting, and I really enjoyed the idea of this. And the beginning, when it all goes down, man, you got people running and screaming, and everybody kind of realizes fairly quickly. I thought they could have handled that better. Like, people have to figure out why these things are attacking them, as opposed to just some helicopters flying around saying, hey, everybody, shut the hell up. And that made for some interesting moments, the dynamic between our characters. Lupita Nyong'o is great, and I'm looking forward to Human Torch now because I thought his performance was awesome. I didn't think Joseph Quinn had it in him. Now, his character is cliche, but his commitment is really good. And that relationship is solid. The movie looks very cinematic. Ultimately, though, I just wasn't in love with the way this plot progressed, kind of the focus of everything, or the lack of focus on things that I found to be more interesting. And I know everybody loved the cat. I love the cat. I wanted to survive, but there were multiple times where I'm like, why is the cat still alive? So maybe I'm being a little grouch here, but still a fun, entertaining movie. And so I'm definitely going to put this on the summer fling tier. Just a little forgettable. Alien Romulus. Let me geek out a little bit. Dude, this film scared the crap out of me at times. That is something that I was really wanting to see. I didn't think I was going to get that. I thought it would be more of a cool sci-fi movie, and it is. If you look at this film, the atmosphere, the color grading, all of those things, it's one of the most cinematic movies in the Alien franchise. It's one of the most cinematic horror films you're going to see all year, and ultimately, it made for just as much of a blockbuster experience as it did a horror experience. That's why I kind of moved it into this section, because it's the best of both worlds. It's the best of sci-fi. It's the best of horror. You don't care as much about the characters as you want to, right? But Caly Spaney's good. You got some nice performances in there. But the scares, one towards the end, it got me, man. I'm sitting there like, I didn't expect that, but all right. You rarely get me, horror genre. You got me this time. What a time in the theater, man. I can't wait to show this to my wife. And so, little more caring about the characters. If we would have had that, it would have been on the top tier, but I'm still going Summer Breeze, man. It's what it's all about. Apes, together, strong. I used to do it better. Human. That's better. I'm sorry. I know I just blew out somebody's speakers. I love the Planet of the Apes movies. The modern ones, okay? I think this is far superior to the original films. I think these are far superior, obviously, to the Tim Burton movie, which sucks. These films are great. Now, Kingdom is a little slower than people wanted. I understand that, but you're kind of rebuilding this universe hundreds of years later, and you're ultimately setting a destination, putting us on a path to that destination, and giving us these new characters that I found to be really beautiful and emotional, man. I love Noah and the crew. I love Proxima Caesar in this film. When the stakes start to ramp up, they really ramp up. Just watched it again the other day. My wife and I had a great time, even though, again, it is a little slow. I like this movie a lot. Ultimately, I may get to the point where I love it. Maybe the next film will determine that, but I am putting this one on the Summer Breeze tier. What a blockbuster. I'm upset that we let Furiosa fail at the box office. Now, you may look at me and say, Austin, why are we putting this on the top tier if this movie failed at the box office? I want you to look at me when I say this. I want you to look at me very closely and intently. I don't care that it cared at the box office. Look, it is a big deal. And ultimately, that may be why we don't get another film. Austin, Fury Road didn't fail at the box office. No, but it didn't do great. This has always been a niche franchise, and people are like, man, if they would have brought Mel Gibson back, I don't think that would have made much of a difference, maybe a little more. But ultimately, I feel as if this was just a product of people not caring as much about the franchise, and then people not caring as much about the fact that this is a prequel. And I understand, prequels get a bad rap. It's not one of those things people are super pumped about when they get announced, but I found this to be the ultimate example of a prequel that enhances the original, which I'm talking about, Fury Road. I know it's not the first movie, but also gives us something, a journey that feels new and fresh, a saga. The way this story is told is awesome, that is impactful, emotional, action-packed, and gives us a Chris Hemsworth performance for the ages. So I don't care, man. I am putting this on the brighter than a summer's day tier because I've seen it twice. I believe it's incredible. And finally, you know what's going on one of the top 2 tiers. I had a great time with this. I understand people do not like this movie. Austin, it's too time multiverse-y, and it's too silly, and it's got some CGI that's not the best, and Sean Levy's got no style, and I understand all that. I've seen Twitter. I get what people are saying. And some of those criticisms, like, yeah, it could have had more style. Okay, this could have had a little more of this, a little more of that. But ultimately, the color grading, not as big of an issue as people thought it was going to be. They enhanced that. They made it better. All those things aside, you watch Deadpool and Wolverine to laugh and have fun and be entertained. And I don't understand why all of a sudden we decided to give a shit about all these other things. Because look, there's a lot of style in Deadpool 2. I understand that. There's the cool factor of the first Deadpool. But this falls right in line with those movies. And you could say it's overly convoluted. I get that. That's a valid criticism because it probably is. But I watch this to have fun, to laugh, to see something on screen I never thought I would see as a kid, Wolverine and Deadpool. Having the best time, cracking some jokes, going crazy with each other. An emotional relationship, a great dynamic. Hugh Jackman having the most fun he's ever had playing this character. I'm not going to say it's his best performance, because Logan is still that, but it's close. It's really close. And this dude is having a blast. You can tell he's having a blast. And the film focuses on them throughout most of the movie. And yeah, there's a lot of bells and whistles. Some of them good, some of them not great. But that's the focus. So at least from an entertainment standpoint, I don't understand how people aren't entertained. Maybe this isn't your sense of humor. But then again, it's like, if you didn't like the first 2 Deadpool movies, you're not going to like this one. That's plain as day to me. And so people were shocked. They're like, I can't believe I didn't like Deadpool 3 and I didn't like Deadpool 1 and 2. Huh? I don't know, man. This is what I want a summer movie to be. You can't use the box office argument because it was a huge success. It's bringing people back to the theater. It finally brought some people back to the MCU. It's been up and down, right? I'm not saying it's going to save the MCU. I think a lot of that falls on the shoulder of the next movie because this one was great. And the more I think about it, the more I love the experience. It was just an awesome time in the theater. Even at my critic screening, it was an amazing time. And so I'm going brighter than a summer's day. Absolutely. All right, folks. It's time to rank these movies. We got 50 and a lot to get through, so let's get it done. At the bottom, ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Lopez fans alike. Sorry. It's Atlas, folks. I'm not apologizing. Actually, I regret saying that. Then we have the ripoff of a Spongebob movie. What a joke. How about Harold and the Purple Crayon? Why does this movie exist? Followed by The Crow, which was just boring. Borderlands, which was admittedly a little more fun, but still bad. Unfrosted looks great right there. How about, let's go Strangers, and then I think a little more entertaining was our tarot cards, The Watchers. Good job at the top of that tier. Why not Pullman at the bottom of the Sunburn tier? Yeah, it definitely feels like Sunburn to me. This one's a little tougher, but I'm going to say The Union. Apologize to Mark Wahlberg and all those Wahlberg fans. Followed by The Deliverance, which it fell apart at the end of the film. Back in Black, it should have been a way more entertaining movie than it was. And then let's go A Family Affair. Looks good right there. How about Despicable Me 4? Will remain in that spot. Sharks Under Paris. Okay. And then this one's a little tougher, but I'm going to say Garfield at the top because at least that's one that works for kids. Sorry, Jackpot. You didn't hit the jackpot today. Incoming will be the next movie on this list. And John Krasinski's If, man. I thought it should have been a lot better than it was. A huge shock for me. Kinds of Kindness. Not even at the top of this tier. What a disappointment. And In a Violent Nature started out good, got really slow. The Fall Guy, congrats. You're at the top of the Dog Days tier. Sorry, Trap fans. You're at the bottom of this list. How about the Horizon film? I'm excited for the next one. And then the Anne Hathaway love story. How sweet. Let's go Fly Me to the Moon. A nice surprise. And then, this one's tough. I'm going to say Beverly Hills Cop right after that. I think I'm changing my mind on the fly here. I'm going to go The Imaginary right below A Quiet Place. It's kind of different than what I expected. Let's go The Bike Riders after that. And I'm going to say Blink Twice was slightly less fun than Bad Boys. I'm also going to change my mind on one more movie, folks. I know this is going to be a shock here, but I'm going to say Cuckoo is going to go down to the summer fling tier. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, there were some issues that may prevent me from saying it's a summer breeze. So if you didn't stay to this point of the video, you may be confused. Summer breeze. Had a great time with Twisters, but it will be at the bottom of this portion of the list. Maxine will be next. A nice time at the theater. Followed by, let's go Caly right after Maxine. Then The Oddity, a terrifying film, followed by Inside Out 2. And then the last stop in Yuma County. Actually, you know what? I'm changing my mind. Let's go Apes Together Strong, right above that. I'm doing this on the fly, folks. Alien looks good there, and The Hitman at the top of the Summer Breeze tier. Here we go, the top movies of the summer. We're going to start with Strange Darling, an absolute banger in the horror thriller genre, followed by, you know what? That looks good right there. I'm going to say Kill is slightly better than Deadpool and Wolverine. I just think the action's a lot more intense. It was way more of a surprise. Whew. Man, it's hard for me to say Sing Sing is the best summer movie because Sing Sing doesn't really feel like a summer movie, but I have to account for quality. I'm going to say Furiosa is the #1 movie of the summer. I know it failed at the box office. I get it, but it is by far the best time, experience, payoff for a movie that I've been waiting on. But you look at those top 5, and I can't see anything wrong with them. Not only as a summer film, but as just a list full of quality, full of entertainment, a little bit of action, a little bit of horror, a little bit of everything you want in that top 5. It's everything I want in a summer movie. This video's went on long enough. I'm done. That's it. Tapping out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for commenting, man. It means the world. It's one of the biggest videos I've ever done. Maybe it is the biggest video I've ever done. All right, I'm going to take a breath and a drink of water.